So there are opening comments that you have, we've handed out. If you didn't get them, they are in the back. And there's also a little brochure that you can take a look at. On the back panel of that brochure is this address, echimestv.org, where the folks have asked that we live stream and record today's time together. So first, good morning and welcome to Sayville Congregational United Church of Christ, where we like to say you are welcome long before you arrive. And that is true. Welcome. On behalf of the clergy who are in attendance this morning, Rabbi Jessica Rosenthal from B'nai Israel Reform, and Reverend Dwight Walter from Congregational Church of Patchogue, and myself, Ray Bagnuolo, the pastor of Sayville Congregational Church. We extend our shalom and our welcome to you all, and thank you for being here to report on this important information about New York State early voting laws. As clergy, we believe that the most sacred right in our democracy is to vote. When that is restricted, the rights of all are diminished, causing undue struggle and harm, especially to those already bearing the burden of underrepresentation and marginalization. We believe we need to do everything necessary to secure solid footing as a nation where all citizens can easily participate in the right to vote. Otherwise, we believe that conditions will continue to worsen for those whose voices have been systematically rejected or silenced. Anything other than full, accessible, unfettered voting for our citizens violates the principles inherent in exercising these self-evident truths, that we are created equal and that we are endowed by our Creator as we know our Creator with certain inalienable rights. The freedom to exercise our right to vote is one of the ways we as a citizenship express our beliefs. This emanates from the same deeply rooted beliefs that first nourished the desire and courage in the closing words of the Declaration of Independence, quote, "to pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor." The unswerving determination for justice and liberty in our lives is born of the same eternal truth that calls us to love our God how we know God and to love one another as we love ourselves. To insist that every person who is a citizen has a right to that expression in the process of voting is an insistence that decisions informed by our beliefs are part of this great country and the governance that we share. From that sacred place, we as faith leaders endorse the extension of every opportunity for all to vote their beliefs without impediment or intimidation, preserving the fabric of our nation, but more, living into the tenets of our faith to love one another, caring for all. And thank you for being here this morning. And with that said, I now turn over this morning's proceedings to, who am I turning it over to?
Jared.
To Jared.
Good morning, and thank you all for coming out here in August in 2019 to hear about voting rights and the new laws coming to New York. This is incredibly important, and all of you folks are going to be involved, whether you knew it or not, coming in here in this education push to make sure people know about these new laws. So first, a thank you to Sayville citizens, Long Island Civic Engagement Table, Pastor Ray, fellow clergy who are here, the Let New York Vote Coalition, and so many local advocates for working tirelessly on this effort, and our hosts for helping to raise awareness regarding voting rights. My name's Jared Berg, B-E-R-G. I'm a lawyer and voting rights advocate with the Let New York Vote Coalition and the co-founder of Vote Early NY, which is a new nonpartisan education initiative, and we're focused on raising awareness about the new laws and assisting administrators with implementation. And you can find us on the web at voteearlyny.org. We created this effort in order to map the entire state's early voting program, because there is no other entity in this state, government or otherwise, that does that sort of thing. From all of our past experience with election administration in the state, We know that the state board doesn't have the funds or the mandate, frankly, to do that sort of thing, and so there's not like a central entity doing that. And so we wanted to make sure that there was a non-government, nonpartisan resource from a pro-voter perspective that is explaining this new law and helping the counties with the heavy implementation task that entails. You can follow us on Twitter at VoteEarlyNY. I mentioned that because in the last week there's probably been 20 plus changes in the early voting program statewide, and things are happening very quickly. So this is a brand new thing, a lot in flux, and we want to make sure people have clear, accurate, timely info. So I think most folks here know, but in January, the first priority our legislature took up was beginning to seriously modernize New York's outdated voting laws for the first time in generations by creating a 9-day early voting period ahead of Election Day with at least 60 hours of access, including evenings and weekends. That's incredibly exciting for New York because this reform brings New York into line with the 38 other states that have figured this out, or at least have tried to before us. They are now, these other states and now New York are providing an election period to voters to exercise their rights rather than a single election day. And this was a top priority in New York, not just because it was neglected for so long, but because directing millions of people to exercise their fundamental rights to vote on a single day is poor policy. It fails to meet the public's basic expectations of due process, convenience, and access, and it's just a logistical barrier that suppresses turnout. This push was led not by politicians, but by regular, busy New Yorkers, including commuters like so many Long Islanders who work long hours, commute long hours, and have very little time on a single workday Tuesday if that were their only option to vote. And this coalition and these committed volunteers insisted on greater voting options, especially in marginalized communities. And while implementation of an overhaul like this comes with challenges, we are seeing dramatic access disparity across the state. And the initial Suffolk County Board of Elections plan places Suffolk at the wrong end of this spectrum. To give you a sense of the program, the new early voting law in Suffolk is being implemented in a way that is offering voters 10 sites. That's 1 per town. And Suffolk is offering 60 hours of early voting, which is the minimum required by the law. Of course, counties are permitted to offer more sites and more hours for the convenience of their constituents and their residents, and that's all of you. So we want people to know about this plan. This is the first shot out the gate, but there is a lot of room for improvement here, but we need people to speak up. The BOE is aware of concerns that have been raised, and we're hoping that by telling the public about their options, not only will the public use these options, but we can improve this program over time. The law anticipates that and intends that. We know that Suffolk BOE shares the goal of improving this program over time. We hope they will do it a little quicker and make dramatic improvements to this plan. To give you a sense of that spectrum that I mentioned, right? There are, in a place like Erie County, where Buffalo is, with 60% of the population of Suffolk, they will have nearly 4 times as many sites. But much closer to home, our neighbors in Nassau, with slightly less voters than Suffolk, will have 15 sites of early voting. And in both those cases, the access is far more convenient and of a greater quality because any eligible voter can access any of those sites. Not the case in Suffolk. That was a choice by the BOE, and we'll talk a little bit about that because the law doesn't actually give counties a choice. It states a rule, and it gives them a few exceptions to invoke at the beginning while we're getting this program up and running. But we want to make sure that this doesn't stay this way. We need to add more sites where people live and will use them and need them, and we need to make sure people can access more than just one assigned site. So to be sure, there are shortcomings in the new law that risk leaving voters in the 9 largest counties in the state underserved. And that's a legislative issue as well as an implementation one. But if their county leaders don't choose to provide more than the minimum access, and if the state doesn't help provide that funding, then the residents of the 9 largest counties in the state are at risk of remaining underserved with far less access than in smaller counties. And that's a problem. But the law actually includes a lot of pro-voter safeguards, some of which is actually being violated by this initial Suffolk plan. I'm going to outline a couple of them quickly. The law requires an equitable plan within the county. So voters within each county have to have fair access. And equity might sound like a squishy concept, but the decision to allocate one site per town, despite the dramatic population disparity in Suffolk County, is one place where this plan just runs afoul of probably the letter of the law, but also obviously the spirit in which it was enacted. The law requires taking into account population centers, transportation patterns, and other factors that one would expect would be taken into account when creating a plan that's supposed to be convenient and responsive to the needs of residents. That was not done here, and I think this plan reflects that. Not a single public hearing, not a single meeting with stakeholders, disability advocates, language access advocates, transportation advocates, the sort of open process that you'd like to see before a plan like this is implemented. There's room to fix that for the spring, certainly. Might even be room to improve that between now and Election Day. But we are less than 60 days from the beginning of the early voting period. And so that's why we're here today speaking out. The third thing I want to mention is, as I said earlier, the law makes clear that countywide vote center access is the rule with limited exceptions, so people can vote where it's convenient, near work or school, or where they have child or elder care obligations, rather than at a single pre-assigned location. And the danger is that if we get stuck with that model, it's not the change that this law was enacted to deliver. It's way too similar to the old model that wasn't working for voters for so long. And so the result is that the one site per town plan creates a situation where for far too many working families and minority communities in Suffolk's largest towns, the greater access intended by the new law, especially if not corrected for 2020, will remain out of reach. We need to fix that, and we are going to fix that. And together, we call upon the Board of Elections to improve this plan incrementally and as soon as possible. Thank you so much.
Good morning. Thanks to everyone for coming. My name is Ed O'Donnell, and I'm representing the Sable Citizens Group. This was initially conceived, the concept of having a press conference on early voting, by the Bayshore Babylon Women's Huddle, which is also a local citizen group like Sable Citizens. The group was started after the 2016 presidential election when a number of people, once they put down their wine glasses from being distraught over the election, decided we really needed to get involved, and we've been working on local activation since then. As Jared mentioned, there's a number of different issues with this law. The first level is on a statewide basis. Basically, the law penalizes any county below Westchester. There are 2 counties in upstate New York that have more than the 350,000 people, which is the number that is stipulated for 7 voting sites. Suffolk, based on that metric that they're using, really with a voting population of 1,046,000, we should have 21 different polling places. And that's me, sorry, my little heart monitor. Yeah, I know, it's kind of unnerving. I cleared out a restaurant about a little earlier. Hold on. Okay, I'm back, and please do not be concerned. All of the counties below Westchester, therefore, are responsible for funding any additional voting sites over 7 sites. Which puts an undue burden on all of those counties, including Suffolk. The Board of Ed's solution was to come up with 10 different voting places, which is more than the 7 minimum that the state mandates. However, their solution was to put 1 voting place per township. And in terms of the townships, this is every town from Shelter Island to Brookhaven to Islip to Huntington. The issue here is that the population of Shelter Island is 1,300 people, whereas the population of Brookhaven is 486,000 people, and Islip is 335,000 people. So basically what this does is it skews the availability of early voting to the smaller population towns. That wide variance of population, everyone has the same number of polling places per town, meaning longer lines, longer wait lists for the larger towns in the county. 83% of the population of Suffolk resides in 4 townships, and they've been assigned 4 polling places. The other 17% of the population resides in 6 townships, and they've been assigned 6 polling places. Now, the reason we got involved with this is, both of our groups are really representative of the town of Islip, but there are issues in terms of what this means demographically to different groups. Certain demographic groups are negatively impacted by this plan. African Americans are 25% in greater concentration of voters in the top 4 population townships. Hispanics are 24% greater concentration in the top 4 townships. This is particularly an issue for the town of Islip, which is 30% concentration of voters for African Americans and 92% greater concentration of Hispanics, as well as a poverty level 23% higher in Islip than in the rest of Suffolk County. What this means is any marginalized communities, or they're marginalizing the impact on these particular communities. Plus, these communities tend to have multiple working parents who are in need of early voting, generally less mass transit available, a lower incidence of car ownership to go to the polls, varying work hours and childcare issues, as well as elderly people as well. So that was basically what we concluded from our analysis. Before I introduce our next speaker, I just wanted to introduce Loretta DeVito from New York Dem Lawyers Association. What we're looking for, she's back there, she just waved. Laura, oh, there you go. Okay, well, I tried, Loretta. Yeah. She is looking for poll watchers, which is another issue. We want to make sure that the voting is done properly, that we're represented within the polling location. So she's looking for, it's volunteer, obviously, but she's looking to do that. She'll be available after the presentation to talk to in the back. So the question is, what are we going to do about this? I'd like to introduce my friend Shoshana Herskovitz from Suffolk Progressives, who's going to take you through that.
Good morning. I'm Shoshana Hershkowitz. I am the founder of Suffolk Progressives, and we are a grassroots, action-oriented group that formed after the 2016 election, like so many others. And I'm here to talk about the moving forward, what the action piece is, and what our ask is. So we've established that there's a real problem in equity with our early voting sites. The fact that Shelter Island, with a population of 1,300, and Brookhaven, with a population of 486,000, have the same number of polling places. There's 1 per township in Suffolk County. That is a real problem. We are asking for an increase to 21 polling places, and it would break down as follows. In the town of Brookhaven, which is our largest town in Suffolk County, we're asking to move from 1 polling place to 5. In the town of Islip, we're asking to move from 1 to 3, as well as in the towns of Babylon and Huntington. We're asking to move from 1 polling place to 3. And finally, in the town of Smithtown, we're asking to move from 1 to 2. So that would take us from 10 to 21 polling places, which would begin to mitigate some of the demographic inequities. Even with this improvement, we would still have an underserved population in both Brookhaven and Islip. So it doesn't solve the problem entirely, but it begins to mitigate it. And it is really crucial that we address this and that we fix it before our 2020 primaries and before our 2020 general election. This is an urgent matter, and as a group that has worked on so many issues, ranging from family separation to healthcare, this is up there in making sure that voices are heard in this democracy. So we are here to ask our Suffolk County Board of Education and our legislator and the executive branch to move from 10 polling places to 21. Like I said, 1 to 5 in Brookhaven, 1 to 3 in Islip, Babylon, and Huntington, and 1 to 2 in Smithtown, to begin to mitigate the demographic inequities that are currently in place in Suffolk County's early voting plan. Thank you. So I'm going to bring it to Mark West now.
Thank you, Shoshana. My name is Mark West. I thank you, Shoshana, for allowing me to speak on behalf of Suffolk Progressives as well. This issue has been based on one critical piece of legislation, and it actually begs the question, what was the intent of that legislation? So when the State Senate and State Assembly passed it and the governor signed it into law, the intent was one thing: recognizing that New York had fallen to something like 40th in the nation in voter participation. This legislation said that we need to increase voter participation. The sad fact is that the way that the Suffolk County Board of Elections has allocated the polling places, the limited hours that these polling places will be open, and even the lack of flexibility that the Board of Elections have put into place by not allowing people to cross town lines to vote in any of these polling places, which may be the most convenient to them, all of which serves not to maximize voter turnout. So we're attempting here to put the needed awareness into our county legislators for the funding purposes, and into the Board of Elections to recognize their responsibility under this new state law. And that responsibility is not to simply try to look for any way that they can sort of skirt around things and meet the bare minimums of this. No, it's to increase voter participation, period, end of story. So how do we get there? They're saying, well, we don't have the money to do it. Well, our neighboring county, Nassau County, you mentioned at your opening, a county that's been under state fiscal control for some 20 years now, a budgetary mess. They managed to find the resources, though, in a bipartisan fashion, a Republican-controlled legislature, a Democratic county executive, to allocate enough funds for 15 polling places. Keep in mind now the size of Nassau. There's 150,000 fewer people than Suffolk. You could fit Nassau County geographically inside of Brookhaven Township. It fits in there. Brookhaven Town has about 40% of the population, almost, just a shade under, 40% of the population of Nassau County. It has one polling place compared to 15. So it becomes very, very clear the inequality of all this. I'm the son of a Holocaust survivor. What my faith has taught me, my faith in throughout the millennials have taught all of us. And from my early childhood in Temple to my present day with my current rabbi, Jessica Rosenthal, who still stays on the same issue in teaching, if we're nothing else, we're about social justice. Social justice. And we have communities in this county, in Brentwood, in Central Islip, and other places, that now have polling places that they cannot access. We're talking about populations that don't miss a voting day because they're too busy at home collecting a social service check. No, quite the opposite. We're talking about working class poor people working multiple jobs to make ends meet, to support their families, not collecting a bit of social services. And to give them the opportunity to vote on a weekend, on a Saturday or a Sunday. By the way, they're also a religious people. And they attend churches on Sundays. In the many states that have had early voting around the country, we've all heard the term of the Sunday souls to the polls. It's a very famous term, and it works so well. And we have so many clergy now that want to be doing this very same thing. Except guess what? These hours have been so truncated at the Board of Elections, as they allocated us, and it alone is going to be a difficult thing to accomplish. So we have those, as Shoshana said, those asks. In conclusion, those asks are, we need to go to at least double the polling places we have, funding those, all right? We must increase the hours. I really don't understand when the Board of Elections in Suffolk County keeps telling us we don't have the money to allocate for this. A polling place opens with 4 inspectors. Its election days are from 6 in the morning till 9 at night. Each of those 4 inspectors are paid $200 for that day's work. That's $800. I'm just doing my own Mark West math here. $800 a polling place. Times 10 polling places, $8,000. Times 10 days of early voting, $80,000. That's my math. I don't know what their math is. They can't afford to open up the polling places. And the workers, the Board of Elections who would have to be at work, those are salaried employees. These are at-will salary employees. They're on duty regardless. So again, without the county Board of Elections laying out their excuse for all this and telling us what these budgetary constraints are, I don't understand it. So, to conclude, we look for them to do a really good study within 30 days following this year's election, in which they're going to track the patterns of the early voting at the 10 polling places they've allocated, with the idea that they're going to be able to reconstitute or reorganize that for next year, for 2020 going forward, in that perhaps they'll find that if they have certain big dead periods at certain polling places, whatever, they may be able to decide that they could reallocate some of that to opening up extra polling places. We are looking for those hours to be extended. And by the way, what I didn't mention to you, those 15 Nassau County polling places, you could vote at any one of them if you're a Nassau County resident. We need them to be able to let us vote at any one of them. I live in Hauppauge on the Islip side of Town Line Road in Hauppauge. I will guarantee you, Main Street, Smithtown, Town Hall area voting place is going to be a lot closer to my home than traveling down to Main Street in Islip, which was at one time the population center of Islip Town, back around the time when the Louisiana Purchase was done. But after the 1950s and 60s, that midpoint of population has moved considerably northward. And we need to get these early voting places into the communities that need them the most in terms of convenience. We need them where people have the most difficulty with transportation and access. Thank you.
We just wanted to mention that the early voting period is October 26th to November 3rd. That's a Saturday, 2 Saturdays before Election Day, ends the Sunday before Election Day. You can find that all online, Vote Early NY, or your county DOE's website.
Thank you. First, I'd like to ask that we give our presenters a round of applause for their And thank you for coming here. Are there any questions that you might have? We're going to bring you the microphone so that you will be on the audio, and there is another mic. I'll leave this with you to pass. Who wants to ask it?
Hi, Fred Langstaff. I live here in Salem. Been here over 40 years. A lot of facts, a lot of information, a lot of talking points. If we're going to go talk to either our legislators or to the Board of Elections, we would like to have some information that we can talk intelligently. Also, you said BOE. It's also Board of Elections and Board of Education. Board of Education has enough concerns and enough problems. Please do not pile this on top of it. So if you can give us information so we have good talking points so that we can go and talk intelligently so we don't look like.
Yeah, we could publish all the talking points on all of our websites, so you'll be able to access it there, whether it's Able Citizens, Suffolk Progressives.
Hi.
First, I just wanted to add, you look like concerned citizens, and you should be. And the challenge of legislating positive change in this area is that now, when folks are enjoying their summers in 2019, is the time when these programs are being built. And whatever is put into place and dry run tested in this odd year will be the bones of the program that's improved upon for next spring. And the turnaround time for that is going to be very fast. But this law does tell boards and give boards the flexibility to improve these programs after each election event. We certainly expect that Suffolk will take advantage of that and embrace the opportunity based on some of the data that we see here and some feedback from communities, and that's what this is about. To your point about talking points, part of the reason we built Vote Early NY, there's a beautiful Know Your Rights page. It will be more beautiful in the days to come, but it basically does lay out the basic, the minimum requirements in the law, the places where counties can improve upon that, and some of the nuance so you can engage your lawmakers in these conversations. And that's particularly important because lawmakers have a lot of priorities, right, that they have to focus on. They often defer to BOE commissioners and to staff folks at the BOEs, and we hope that those folks will implement this in the spirit it was enacted. But other than that, right, it's really going to be on us to hold them accountable. Thank you.
Hi, Debbie Langstaff. You talked about the hours that they were going to have the polls open, but you didn't tell us the hours. Does anybody know, like, is it going to be 6 to 9 like the regular?
No, they're not. No, I don't have the exact hours. Kelly, please. No, Kelly, take the microphone.
I'm going to read the mic over to you.
Hi, for Brookhaven Town, I know the hours.
They're all uniform.
They are 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. every one of the days except for Tuesday, October the 29th, which is noon to 8, and Friday, November 1st, which is also noon to 8. There is a phone number at the Board of Elections to call as well. I don't have that memorized, apologize for that, but it's a good idea to call the Board of Elections first just to make sure that those hours have not changed, because they do say on the website that they are subject to change. So basically it's 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. every day, except for those 2 days.
And what about the Saturday, Sunday? What about the Saturday, Sunday?
Here's the phone number. Wait.
I just looked up the phone number. It's 631-852-4500.
Right, thank you. And we're going to look up that information before we leave here. We're going to have all that information right now.
Okay. Are there other questions? Yes, and please just speak right into the top of the mic.
This is this is not a question, but a statement. I'm from the town of Huntington. And what we've discovered is that our early voting place is not in the population center. It is far away from most of the minority communities. It is also hard to access There might be one bus running along Deer Park Avenue where it is located, but if those are the hours, we have our working community who will not be able to access early voting places. It is just out of reach. I don't know if the Board of Election did this on purpose, but I got to tell you something. This is very disconcerting.
So I totally agree with you, and I think that, again, we're talking about places like Huntington. We're talking about the town of Brookhaven, which is the size of Atlanta, and one polling place for Atlanta is a travesty. And I think that Long Island is not built to be convenient. We don't have great public transportation. You can't walk places. So it is on our Board of Elections. And as a teacher, I can totally understand the difference between the two BOEs. I feel you. It is crucial that we make this work so that everyone can vote. And that's why we're here, and that's why we're asking for these increases in polling places. And you'll notice that we've asked in Huntington and Islip to increase them, as well as in Brookhaven, where it can be almost impossible for someone who doesn't have a car and who doesn't have the right working hours to get there. And that is just an absolute injustice, and solidarity, you're right.
I just want to give a clear statement of the hours. That's incredibly important, that we have accurate information out there. Of course, this information is available on your Board of Elections website. We also have made this available at Vote Early NY. You just pull up your county. It has your program to the extent that that's crystallized. Saturdays and Sundays, the early voting hours are 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Monday, October 28th, it's 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. On Tuesday, October 29th, it's 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. On Wednesday, October 30th, it's 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Same for Thursday, October 31st, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Friday, November 1st, 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. This law does require 2 days of evening hours to 8 p.m. And again, on Saturday and Sunday, before Election Day, 10 a.m. To 3 p.m. So that's 60 total hours, and a contrast there with your neighbors in Nassau is they are providing 75 hours.
I think the object was to check the box and say we did it, but doesn't mean it's being done right.
Okay, hi, I'm Joe Tronalone. I'm echoing basically what Judy said as a town of Islip resident. Our polling location is located at 401 Main Street. It's Town Hall West on Main Street in Islip, which is extremely convenient for me. It's 2 blocks from my house, but it is the complete opposite of a centrally located polling location. So I know it's too late this year to have those additional polling places open. Is it possible in the time that we have between now and the start of the early voting to have that location changed to a centrally located place? Thinking a perfect location, centrally located in the town of Islip, could be the Brentwood Recreation Center, the Islip Town Brentwood Recreation Center. Is it too late to contact the Board of Elections and see if possibly we could have that change made?
I'm just going to start as a baseline. It's never too late to do the right thing. There are factors in there the county's supposed to take into account when doing this plan. We're not sure how they did their plan this time, and we hope they'll have a different process next time. As I mentioned earlier, there's been several changes around the state. Almost every day I'm hearing about early voting changes, so I would not say it's too late. In Suffolk alone, there's been 2 changes in the last, I want to say 45 days. They very recently apparently have moved the East Hampton site from one place to another. So I don't think it's too late to make a change, but they do need to get this information out to the public. There is a communication plan requirement, and we're not exactly sure what Suffolk is going to do there. They do have that ready. There's a deadline for that. And I would say that any time before that plan goes public is an opportunity to make small adjustments to meet people's needs on a good faith basis.
Joe, I think without sounding all conspiracy theory about this, the Board of Elections undoubtedly contacted each town individually to get their input of where they wanted those polling places to be. and whether partisan politics played in that, depending on the town, who heads that town, and where they think most of their voters are located versus other voters, you know, that's all fair game. But it makes you scratch your head when I heard the lady in front of you mention where Huntington put their polling place, not even in line with a local bus system, and the Hart bus system is a much better bus system than anything we have in Iceland town, right? Anything Suffolk Bus offers, and it's a concern.
My name is Shahid Mian. I have a question. You know, we have our meeting over here. Is the Board of Election is the only place we can contact, you know, for the change, or we have to knock on our public official door also?
Yeah, there are two. It's the Board of Elections. It's the funding stream for the Board of Elections, and where they would get at least some of that direction from the county legislature. So the county legislature needs to provide the funding, and if they do so, as they did in Nassau, to that legislature. So we need to convince our legislature to act, as well as the Board of Elections to do the right thing.
So which is the best place, you know, we can all, you know, get together and...
I start on the elected officials' doors.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to make one more suggestion. I think that there is power in educating our fellow citizens. So I would say everyone who's here today, if we're writing letters to our local papers, which are always looking for letters to the editor with the specifics about this issue, pointing out the inequities, if we're posting it on social media, other people hear about it, and if we give them the plan for action, then the cry gets larger. And it's much harder to ignore a public outcry than it is to have a meeting behind closed doors where someone can just tell you no. So I would suggest taking it to the public as well as to your legislators.
My name is Dwight Lee Walter. I'm pastor at the Congregational Church of Patchogue. In anticipation of this event, which I'm so pleased I was informed of by Pastor Ray, I called, and I won't disclose them, but I talked to legislators. I said, where are you at on this? And it fell into two camps. One was basically, if these changes do not serve my election, why would I do it? And the other was, these changes do serve my election, and I don't want to appear like I'm gerrymandering, or so I thought, well, that's up the creek with no paddle if I've ever seen one. So is there any way, or is there any where to get legislators to speak up and say, where are you on this? Whether it serves you, which makes sense, I want to get reelected, or whether it enhances the changes would, where you have a better chance over your opponent. Either way, where are the legislators on this, and would that affect the Board of Elections or not?
Well, they're a good place to start, because had they allocated the right amount of money, this would be a non-discussion today. So I would definitely contact your legislators. As we all know, again, from 2016, the level of politics in government, at least to me, was shocking. And they're not really doing, like, someone should explain to me how you think the numbers for the way they allocated the polling places is equitable. Because what can happen is if someone puts a lawsuit against them, they're going to lose, because it's clearly on the face of it discriminatory. But you know, the more you get out there, first of all, as Shoshana said, the information. This is the information. I knew nothing about this until a month ago when we started this group and started looking at this. Secondly is to get people, call your legislators. Their role is not to just get reelected, and if we don't vote for them, they won't get reelected. And then the Board of Elections, also we need to contact them and tell them that this is not okay. Your citizens are not happy with this.
Thank you. My name is Kelly Devine, and I'm here with TASK, which stands for Taking Action Suffolk County. We're a PAC, and we are presently canvassing, knocking on doors, making sure that people know that they finally have these 9 days of early voting. So I just wanted to, on top talking to your legislators, calling the Board of Elections. There are also opportunities to knock on your fellow citizens' doors. As imperfect as this first step is, people do not know about it. When we knock on the door, people are surprised. They are thankful that finally someone is knocking on their door telling them to try, even in this one little bit, to make their lives a little easier and less difficult. We're walking particularly in underserved areas, places where all of the issues that you've discussed about transportation and job inconsistency are a big barrier for getting out to vote. So we are out there working, happy to talk to anybody afterwards if you'd like to know more. Thank you.
So I want to thank you for that point. You know, we've done a lot of critiquing today, and I don't think that that's misplaced. But I do want to say that this is the first step of a very positive change. There are now 9 additional days in which people can exercise their rights. So that's really exciting, and it is a great first step. There would be a particularly cruel irony, though, right? If that increase in access is somehow less convenient than it already is for a person to vote on Election Day Tuesday, if they have to travel such a far distance, or it's way out of the way, or there's another site they might want to use and they can't use that one. So we need to keep that balance in mind, and we do have a lot of work to do. We need to help the board. I don't know what their communication plan is, but we want to make sure it involves digital, social media. We want to make sure that it's more than just a postcard.
Anyone else?
So thank you to everybody who joined us today. Thank you to everybody on the panels and for staying with us afterwards. And I will say this is what we will do at Sable Congregational United Church of Christ. We will place on our website information, any phone numbers you might want to send us, that where people can contact, what steps there are to take, because we agree with Jared, and everyone really, I think, has said this is good. This is a good start. So the ability to, you know, positively reinforce what has been done and then to build on that to do more. It's the right direction. So we will do our part to put all of that on our site that we can as sort of a clearinghouse for that information about actions we can take, because we are committed to making sure that, you know, hospitality has to do with many things. And I think one of the ancient traditions we all share in terms of hospitality is in welcoming the stranger as best we can, and making it possible for people who we don't know but are citizens and have beliefs and have thoughts and want to get to the polls and express them as part of this citizenship. I think that is support of that ancient tradition in a way that the communities of faith as well as others are called to do. So this is why we open up our sanctuary here. It's a sacred place, but the world's a sacred place. And this is what we have to offer in reaching that point together where we have a system, we have the ability for everybody to share in the expression of their voice and their vote, and somehow getting to the point where it is that we're on our path to reach one day. So with that, I'm going to ask Rabbi Rosenthal to close us out with some comments, and then we will be done for the morning, and you are all welcome to stay here as long as you like, to gather, to linger, and to have conversation. Ed wanted to say something.
Thank you. I just wanted to, I'm sure you're thinking only 3 people did this whole thing, but it wasn't. It was a whole bunch of different organizations. I want to thank all of them now. Common Cause, the Bayshore Bethel and Huddle, Sable Citizens, Suffolk Progressives, the Long Island Civic Engagement, Long Island Activists, Let New York Vote, People Power, Patchogue, and Vote Early New York. So thanks to all those groups for all their input on this.
Thank you, everyone. Rabbi?
just want to add my word of thanks as well. It's a privilege and an honor to be standing here for this very, very important cause. The Jewish sage Hillel once taught, Al tifros min hatzifor, do not separate yourself from the community. It is our responsibility to play an active role in the community and choosing its leaders. We have heard today how important this issue is, not only for all of us to be consulted, but to be allowed equal access, opportunity, and empowerment to vote. May we recognize the Jewish and universal notion that we are all created b'tselem Elohim in the image of the sacred. All voices have value, regardless of where they reside, the color of their skin, their religious beliefs, their sexual identity, or their gender. Let's now go forth and agree to work to make that truth a reality for this election and for all that follow, as we say together. Amen.